A sudden crackle of static split the silence, like a scream swallowed by time itself. In a darkened control room buried beneath the Earth's crust, a wall of monitors flashed white noise. Then came the voice, cold, deliberate, and inhuman. "They're already here," it said. Time froze. Air stilled. Every heartbeat halted. The signal surged again, glitching reality itself. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a breach. Across the globe, devices lit up simultaneously with encrypted alien signals. Swirling glyphs, screeching audio, colors no human mind could categorize. Panic flooded the streets. Phones died. Skies darkened. Satellites fell. In the chaos, the camera held on one man, our protagonist, standing alone in a hangar, staring into the static storm. His breath caught. His pupils shrank. Then a whisper, deep in his mind. "We've been waiting for you." The transmission didn't just travel through the air, it infected it. Everywhere the signal reached, reality buckled. Street lamps shattered under unseen pressure. Flocks of birds fell mid-flight. In the protagonist's apartment, old family photos blinked with interference, the faces of loved ones replaced with static. He stared in disbelief, surrounded by ghosts of a past now corrupted. A knock hit the door. Another. Then silence. He grabbed his sidearm, breath shallow. This wasn't a war, it was a rupture. "You're not supposed to remember," a voice whispered from behind. He spun around. No one there. The shadows now moved differently. Time felt off. The protagonist moved through the room like a diver in deep water, every step thick with weight. As he stepped outside into the night, the sky was wrong. Stars pulsed in patterns. Geometry hung where clouds used to be. Something ancient had awakened. On the other side of the world, deep beneath Antarctic ice, ancient machinery stirred. A massive circular structure, dormant for millennia, pulsed with sudden energy. The ice cracked and screamed, fracturing in spirals. Within the buried alien ruin, dormant holograms awakened. They displayed Earth's continents, blinking red marks on every major city. This wasn't first contact. It was Phase 2. The alien AI, blind to morality, activated protocols etched in crystal long before humanity's birth. "Awaken the vessel," it said in a voice that echoed through rock and steel. Back in the city, our protagonist dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by a piercing headache. Visions swarmed his mind, battlefields not of Earth, symbols from forgotten worlds. He clutched his skull and screamed, unaware that far below, something vast and ancient had just called his name. The emergency broadcast system failed. News channels went dark. Across the world, military bases entered lockdown. Nuclear silos braced for impact. Not from missiles, but from the unknown. Satellites detected massive spatial anomalies hovering just beyond Earth's orbit. Not ships, stations. Observers, day watchers. The alien presence had always been there, just hidden. Now, they were ready to be seen. In an underground command center, generals screamed orders, but no response came. Communications blacked out. Fear crawled into every corner. The protagonist's name lit up on a sealed file marked, "Designated Response Catalyst." A whisper of recognition crept through him. "This can't be real," he said aloud. But something inside him remembered. He had been prepared for this, programmed even. And now the countdown had begun. Back above ground, civilians flooded highways. Cars clogged every exit. Planes were grounded. Dogs howled endlessly. Street signs flashed in impossible languages. In the center of the chaos stood the protagonist, alone at the edge of the city. Behind him, the skyline flickered like a corrupted simulation. His mind raced. Every instinct screamed to run, but something rooted him to the ground. He felt pulled, magnetized by a force he couldn't name. In his pocket, his father's military dog tags began to hum. They glowed faintly, the letters on them rearranging. Not English. Not human. He clenched them in his fist as the alien aurora stretched over the city. His jaw tightened. The time for denial had ended. This was not an invasion. This was activation. He hadn't cried in years. Not since the funeral. But now, alone in an abandoned safe house on the city's edge, tears welled up unbidden. The protagonist sat on the floor, knees to chest, clutching a faded photo of his mother, her smile now ghosted by static interference, her face half erased. He whispered, "Why me?" No answer came. The walls buzzed faintly. The silence was alive. Flashbacks surfaced. His deployment, the mission gone wrong, the commander who died because of a call he made. His failure had followed him like a shadow, invisible but suffocating. He buried his face in his hands. All his training, all the discipline, it meant nothing now. Outside, distant sirens rose and fell. The city was still unraveling, and so was he. But within that spiral of despair, a flicker of something else stirred, resolve. Broken, yes. But not done. He remembered the day they took his father. Government men in unmarked vehicles, black suits, cold faces. No explanations. Just silence, and a sealed casket delivered weeks later, empty. The official report said, classified combat casualty, but even as a child, he knew something was wrong. That wound never healed. It festered. And now, the pieces began to connect. The dog tags. The file. The activation. His father had been part of this. Whatever this was. He opened the encrypted drive he'd taken from the military drop point. Files decrypted. Slowly. A video played. His father, alive, older, eyes sunken. If you're seeing this, it means they've come for you too. His breath caught. You were born for this, son, and you're not alone. But they'll try to make you think you are. The screen cut to black. And in that moment, the isolation cracked. He ran. Through alleys soaked in rain, heart pounding. They were tracking him. Not the aliens, someone else. Vehicles with no license plates, faces without eyes behind one-way visors. They weren't military. They weren't human. He ducked into an alley, body pressed against wet brick. The sound of boots approached. Steady. Mechanical. He reached for his pistol, hands trembling. Then, a voice. Female, sharp, familiar. Stop moving, you'll get us both killed. He turned to see her, Sarah, from his old unit. But something was different. Her eyes shimmered unnaturally. You're compromised, he said. She replied, we both are. Before he could speak again, an invisible blast ripped through the alley, throwing them both against the wall. Sirens rose again in the distance. The rules of reality were no longer fixed, and trust had just become a luxury. They escaped the city under cover of a collapsing grid. Power outages spread like wildfire, plunging block after block into darkness. Inside an abandoned tunnel, lit only by red flares, Sarah explained everything. We were bred for this. You, me, the others. Sleeper units? Biological insurance policies? He didn't want to believe it. But the signs had always been there. His immunity to neural toxins, the rapid recovery after injury, the nightmares that weren't dreams. Why me? He asked. Sarah looked at him, grief in her eyes. Because your blood isn't just human. The truth was a weight. He pressed his back against the wall, breath shallow. They designed us to survive what's coming, she added. But they didn't plan on us waking up before the signal. The flare flickered out, leaving them in darkness. And for the first time, he felt the edges of who he was begin to split. He woke in a cold sweat. They had made camp in a forgotten train yard, shielded from scanners by electromagnetic dead zones. Sarah was already awake, scanning the perimeter. The stars above were wrong again, still shifting, unnatural. He sat up, hands trembling, unsure if he had dreamt what she said, or if it was a memory returning. In the quiet, he stared at his reflection in a broken train window. Something inside him had changed. Not just mentally, physically. His veins glowed faintly, barely perceptible under the skin. He touched his chest where his heart pounded like a drum, faster than normal. Sarah returned, silent. "It's starting," she whispered. He didn't ask what. Deep down he already knew. Identity wasn't a birthright anymore. It was a weapon. And he was just beginning to understand what he'd been forged to become. The next morning, they followed a faint signal through the forest, an encoded pulse buried deep in the earth. The trees were unnaturally still, as if listening. Sarah moved ahead with precision, scanning the path with a handheld disruptor. The protagonist trailed her, distracted. The night's revelation still clawed at him. He was changing. And not just on the inside. They reached a clearing. At the center stood a monolith, metallic, alien, humming with dormant energy. "This is one of them," Sarah said. "A relay. They left these centuries ago." He stepped closer, the resonance in his chest sensing with its hum. The monolith responded, lights activated, glyphs rippling across its surface. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by images flashing in his mind. Wars, stars, faces, not human. "You're interfacing," Sarah said. "They'll see you now." Cold dread settled in his bones. The connection didn't break. It pulled him deeper. He stood inside the projection of an alien archive, his mind wandering vast corridors of memory, not his own. Images flowed through him, ancient battles across dead worlds, galactic councils in flame and Earth. Always Earth. Marked as a strategic seed point. When he snapped out of it, he was gasping for air, eyes wide. Sarah steadied him. "They marked your bloodline," she said. "That's why you survived all those missions." He looked at her, realization dawning. "You knew?" She nodded. "I was assigned to watch you years ago. I wasn't supposed to make contact, but everything's accelerating." He staggered back, betrayal and revelation crashing together. "I'm not a soldier," he said bitterly. "You are now," Sarah replied. "And we don't have much time left." By nightfall, they reached a resistance hideout, an old train depot converted into a war bunker. Inside, a half-dozen operatives studied flickering screens and alien schematics. One figure stood out, Commander Vega, grizzled, intense, eyes full of mistrust. "He's not cleared," Vega growled. Sarah stepped forward. "He's active. He accessed the monolith." Murmurs erupted. Vega approached the protagonist, his face inches away. "We've lost 3 cities. Sleeper agents turned. What makes you different?" The protagonist didn't flinch. "I didn't choose this," he said. "But I'm not running." Silence settled. Then, Vega turned away. "Fine, we'll see if you survive the next drop." Tension hung thick. For the first time, the protagonist felt the weight of being part of something bigger than himself, and the quiet hatred of being feared by the very people he might have to save. The mission briefing was brutal. A facility in Siberia had gone dark, last known for housing an alien interface node. They were to extract any surviving personnel and secure the node before enemy forces arrived. Enemy no longer meant aliens alone. Rogue human factions were awakening their own sleepers. As the dropship prepped, the protagonist geared up, armor, rifle, dog tags tucked beneath his chestplate. Sarah checked her weapon silently. Vega barked orders from the front. The air was thick with unspoken fear. As the engines roared, the protagonist stared into the reflection of his visor. His eyes, once green, now shimmered faint silver. Whatever he was becoming, it had already started. "No turning back," Sarah said, strapping in beside him. He nodded. "Not this time." They dropped into snow and fire. The Siberian outpost was half destroyed, smoke rising from deep craters. Screams echoed through broken halls. The team moved fast, splitting into fire teams. Inside, remnants of an alien interface pulsed erratically, corrupted data splashing across cracked screens. The protagonist felt it before he saw it. A presence. Something watching. In the lab's core chamber they found survivors. But something was wrong. One of them stepped forward, body twitching. "We waited," he said in a warped voice. Then his skin split. A parasite burst forth. Metal and bone fused, human and alien. Gunfire erupted. The protagonist didn't hesitate. Training and instinct fused with something deeper. He moved like lightning, neutralizing the threat. But the look in Vega's eyes afterward wasn't respect. It was fear. The war had changed. And so had he. The debrief was quiet. Too quiet. They returned to the bunker, bloodied, shaken, but alive. Vega's team reviewed the recovered data. What little remained. Alien code buried beneath human encryption. And someone on Earth had been protecting the data. Or hiding it. Sarah and the protagonist sat across from each other, wounds half-dressed. "That thing back there, it wasn't alien," he said. "Not fully." Sarah nodded grimly. "Human augmentation protocols. Early experiments. They've been testing hybrids longer than they admit." He stood, pacing. "Why the secrecy?" She looked up. "Because if the world knew we've been trading DNA with something off-world, there'd be no going back." He clenched his fists. "We're not just in a war. We're someone's experiment." She didn't argue. Outside, a storm rolled over the city, and with it came the feeling that the real enemy hadn't even stepped onto the field yet. The data cracked at midnight. Not through brute force, but through instinct. The protagonist looked at the glyphs and they responded, aligning themselves into legible patterns. Sarah watched, stunned. "It's reading you." Maps unfolded. Galactic charts. Trade routes. And in the center, Earth, marked not as a planet, but as a nexus. "This isn't invasion," the protagonist whispered. "It's convergence." A deeper file opened. Surveillance footage. Hidden meetings between world leaders and alien emissaries, some dating back over 50 years. Deals. Technology. Genetic research. Sacrifices. "We've been played," Sarah said. "Not just by them. By our own kind." The final image burned itself into the screen, a birth certificate with his name and an alien insignia in place of a hospital seal. The room spun. "They built me," he said. "But what for?" The revelation broke something in him. Alone in the war room, the protagonist stared at the projection of his face, next to an alien genome map. It wasn't that he was human. He had never been only that. Every battle he'd survived, every moment that should have killed him, it had all been part of a plan. His plan? Theirs? He didn't know anymore. Sarah entered but kept her distance. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't answer. His voice when it came was hollow. "What happens when the weapon realizes it was never holding the gun?" She stepped closer, unsure. "You're not just a weapon, not anymore." He turned toward her, and for the first time the silver in his eyes burned faint white. Something had awakened fully now. "Then, it's time I start asking the questions." They moved out before dawn. A Black Ops convoy headed toward a hidden mountain facility known only to the highest echelon. The road wound through mist-covered peaks, silence only broken by the hum of engines. Inside the lead vehicle, Vega handed the protagonist a file. "This is where it started. Your mother worked here." The name on the folder, Project Dawnseed. Sarah leaned closer. "We thought it was about defense tech. Turns out it was prenatal engineering." His hands trembled slightly. The vehicle jolted, and a sudden memory flashed. White rooms, masked faces, and his mother screaming. Not from pain. From defiance. "She tried to stop them," he muttered. Vega gave him a grim nod. "And paid for it." The mountains loomed ahead, cold and vast. And somewhere within them waited the beginning of everything, and possibly its end. The entrance to the facility was hidden in plain sight, an old weather station built into the mountainside. Inside, steel corridors stretched downward, each step echoing deeper into forgotten history. Flickering lights lit walls covered in peeling warnings and obsolete military seals. Sarah whispered, "They buried this place for a reason." Deep below, they reached a sealed chamber. The door recognized his DNA, opened without resistance. Inside, cryochambers lined the walls, all empty but one. A figure floated inside. His mother. Preserved. Ageless. "She didn't die," he breathed. Monitors activated. Logs played. Her final message. "They'll come for him, but he must choose who he is." Tears welled in his eyes. The silence broke with alarms. They had been found. And the facility wasn't just a grave. It was a signal tower. Awakening had begun. Red lights washed over the cryochamber as sirens wailed. Sarah locked the door behind them, but the alarms had already done their damage. "They're coming," she said. Vega's voice crackled over comms. Multiple signatures inbound, not human. The protagonist stood before his mother's chamber, frozen in time. The message still echoed in his mind. He must choose who he is. Outside, gunfire erupted. Inside, something shifted in him. Not fear, clarity. He turned to the pod's console. "She's alive, but barely. If we disconnect, we lose her." Sarah nodded. "But if we stay, we all die." The protagonist paused, then reached for the console. "We wake her." The system hissed. The pod vented. Cold mist swept the room. His mother's eyes fluttered open, and her first word was his name. "You're not ready," she said. But it was too late for that. Destiny had already arrived. They moved fast through the tunnels beneath the facility, guided by the mother's fading strength and forgotten paths etched in her mind. She barely walked, half carried by the protagonist. "They made you a weapon," she whispered. "But you weren't meant to be used. You were meant to undo what they started." Explosions shook the stone. Support beams cracked. "Where's the core?" Sarah shouted. The mother coughed. "Deepest level. Behind the null field. That's where the anchor is." The protagonist blinked. "Anchor?" She nodded. Earth was bound to the network through that node. Sever it, and the grid collapses. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just sabotage. It was severance. The end of the control. "What happens if I touch it?" he asked. She looked at him, pained. "You survive, or you don't." Still, he kept moving. He wasn't built to hesitate. Not anymore. They reached the node chamber, a cathedral-sized vault lined in alien alloy, humming with impossible energy. In its center stood the anchor, a swirling core of light and matter suspended in a gravity field, pulsing with intelligence. "It's alive," Sarah whispered. The mother leaned against the wall, her strength almost gone. "This is what's been controlling everything: thought, behavior, history." The signal began here. The protagonist approached the core. It reacted, stabilizing, almost welcoming. "It knows me," he said. Vega's voice cut in through static. "We've got hostiles incoming. 2 minutes." Sarah stepped forward. "You don't have to do this." He looked at her. "I already did." He placed his hand on the core, and the world fell away. Light exploded through him. Time fractured. The system fought back. But he didn't scream. He accepted it. He was no longer just human. He was the counterforce. The energy storm tore through the mountain. Outside, the sky cracked open as satellites fell, and comms went dead. Across the globe, the alien grid collapsed like dominoes, one node after another blinking out. But inside the chamber, it wasn't over. The core pushed against him, digging into his memories, his pain. It showed him futures. Realities where Earth didn't survive. "You are the variable," a voice echoed. Not his, not theirs. Just truth. His body convulsed. Sarah screamed. The mother wept silently. And then, silence. A pulse surged outward, clear, final. The anchor dimmed. He collapsed. Time restarted. Sarah rushed forward. His chest rose barely. His eyes flickered open. "It's done," he whispered. But the look in his eyes had changed. Whatever survived that connection wasn't entirely him. Or maybe it was what he was always meant to be. Outside, the storm cleared. The facility lay in ruins, but the signal was gone. The sky was normal again. Planes resumed flight. Screens powered back on, but this time with no interference. Humanity had been unshackled, and they didn't even know it. The protagonist stood in the clearing with Sarah and Vega, his mother resting nearby. "They'll come back," Vega said. "Eventually." The protagonist nodded. "Let them," Sarah asked quietly. "What are you now?" He looked to the sky, voice calm. "Still human, just finally whole." He turned to her. "It's not over. This wasn't war. It was lockdown." Sarah exhaled. "Then what happens now?" He walked forward, jaw set, eyes steady. "Now, we wake the others." Behind him, the mountains stood still, but above them, stars had begun to shift once more. The world didn't celebrate. It didn't even notice. No parades, no news coverage, just silence. The war no one knew they were part of had ended in the shadows. But inside a secure black site, known only as Terminal Echo, questions were being asked. The protagonist stood before a council of rogue intelligence leaders, faces blurred by encryption. "We know what you did," said one voice. "You severed the grid." Another chimed in and destabilized over 24 cooperative regimes. He didn't flinch. "I gave Earth back its will." The lights dimmed. "That wasn't your decision to make." He stepped forward. "You didn't make me to ask permission." Silence. Then the lead figure leaned in. "So what are you now?" The answer came cold. "I'm what happens when the lie ends." They didn't respond. But behind that silence, the machinery of control trembled. He left Terminal Echo without escort. No chains, no weapons. Just silence. Outside, Sarah waited, arms crossed. "They let you walk?" He nodded. "They don't know what to do with me, and they're afraid to find out." She glanced upward. "The satellites haven't come back." He looked to the horizon. That was the point. A beat passed. "There's unrest in Geneva. A blackout in Tokyo. Everyone's realizing they were being guided. And now the compass is gone." He replied, "They'll adapt, or they won't." Sarah frowned. "And us?" He turned to her, his voice quieter. "We keep moving, we find the others. If I wasn't the only one built this way, someone else is waking up somewhere." Her eyes narrowed. "And what if they don't take it well?" His answer was soft but firm. "Then I'll stop them. Even if they're like me." They drove for hours without speaking. Snow gave way to sand. Somewhere in the Mojave, an old signal beacon pinged once, then went silent. The protagonist pulled the vehicle off-road. In the distance, a bunker door stood half buried in rock. Desert wind whipped dust around their boots as they approached. Inside, the power still worked. Lights flickered on. Screens booted. One showed a heat signature, human, alive. They followed the signal down a narrow shaft. In a sealed containment room, they found her, a woman, maybe 30, unconscious but stable, suspended in an energy field. Her vitals were off the charts, far above human norms. Sarah whispered, "Another one." The protagonist nodded. "But she's not active." He stared at her face, eyes still closed. "When she wakes up, she'll be just like I was, lost, dangerous." He looked back. "We need to be ready." Night fell quickly in the desert. They waited in silence as the woman began to stir. Her fingers twitched. Monitors beeped erratically. Sarah prepped a sedative, but the protagonist stopped her. "Let her wake on her own. She needs to feel it." Her eyes opened slowly, silver like his. Confusion flooded her face, then panic. She slammed her hand against the barrier. "Where am I?" she screamed. "Who are you?" He stepped forward. "Like you," he said. "And you're not a prisoner." Her breathing slowed. "Then what am I?" His voice was steady. "You're a sleeper, like me. You were made. But now you get to choose who you become." Silence followed. She pressed her forehead to the glass. "Am I dangerous?" His response came without hesitation. "Only if you believe their version of you." Her hand lowered. "Then teach me." She stepped out of the chamber with caution but without fear. The barrier deactivated. No alarms. No resistance. The protagonist extended his hand. She took it. Sarah watched silently, unreadable. Outside, the desert wind had calmed. Stars stretched across the sky, brighter than before. The three of them stood in the open, new, uncertain, changed. "What now?" the woman asked. The protagonist looked out across the sands. "Now we rebuild what they broke," Sarah added, "and make sure no one else controls it again." In the distance a faint light blinked. A drone returning, aimless without signal. He stared at it. "Others will come looking. Not everyone will want peace." Sarah asked, "You sure you can lead them?" He looked down at his hand, still faintly glowing, then at the two women beside him. "No," he said. "But I'm done hiding." News broke in fragments. Strange power fluctuations. Surveillance anomalies. Satellites coming back online, but broadcasting nothing. The world sensed a shift, but no one knew why. In a hidden bunker outside Berlin, a rebel technologist activated an old beacon. It pulsed once and then responded, with coordinates. The protagonist stared at the data. "They're surfacing," he said. Sarah stood nearby, arms folded. "Sleeper units?" He nodded. "Across multiple continents, some waking peacefully, others violently." The woman they rescued, now called Mira, studied the transmissions. "We need a network, a way to reach them before the others do." The protagonist agreed. "If we don't guide them, someone else will." He looked up at the holographic globe spinning before them. "And if they're like me, they won't wait to be asked." It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about stewardship. The first recruit arrived quietly, an enhanced pilot named Ramit. His memories fractured, his control tenuous. He flinched at sounds, eyes scanning constantly. "How do I know this isn't another manipulation?" he asked. The protagonist stepped forward. "Because I'm not asking you to serve. I'm offering you a choice." Rami stared at him, then looked to Mira. She nodded, gentle. "We've all been programmed, we're here to overwrite it." That word, overwrite, hung in the air. A defiance. A purpose. Later that night, Rami sat alone by a fire pit behind the outpost. The protagonist joined him in silence. Finally, Rami asked, "How do you stay human?" The answer came slowly. "You choose to be. Every day." The flames crackled. And in the quiet, another mind came home to itself. As more sleepers arrived, the lines began to blur. Not all were stable. One, a former intelligence operative named Kale, lashed out during integration, hallucinating commands, mistaking Mira for an enemy. It took 3 soldiers to contain him. "Some of them aren't going to make it," Sarah warned. The protagonist watched Kale thrash in a containment cell. "Then we do what we can. And when we can't..." He didn't finish the sentence. Outside, Mira met with others, organizing comms and training schedules. "They're not an army," she reminded him. "They're survivors?" He nodded, heavy. But the wrong voice could make them into one. Trust was fragile. Hope, even more so. But this was the new battlefield, not of guns, but of identity. And the war wasn't over. It had simply evolved. A signal arrived from space. Not a message. A warning. A pulse timed like a heartbeat. It wasn't alien, But it wasn't human either. Mira's eyes widened. It's them, the architects. The protagonist felt it in his spine. They're watching. Sarah moved to cut the feed, but it stopped on its own. Silence followed. They're gauging us, Mira said. Seeing if we broke containment or became something worse. The protagonist knew then, defeating the grid wasn't the end. It had been a trigger. Somewhere far beyond Earth, they were preparing a response. He looked to his team, humans once used as pawns, now gathering strength. We have to show them we're not broken, we're awake. But even he felt the shadow of what was coming. This wasn't just the fallout of a war. It was the start of a reckoning. Morning came. Quiet. One. But cold. My own. The protagonist stood on the ridge above the base, wind tugging at his coat. Below, the others stirred, training, building, trying. Mira approached, silent beside him. They're starting to believe in something again, she said. He nodded, distant. They deserve to. She glanced up. You're leaving, aren't you? He hesitated. Not for long, but I have to know who built me, and why they stopped trying to control me. She didn't argue. Just placed a small comm device in his hand. Stay in touch. He smiled faintly. No promises. He turned and walked down the hill alone. As the camera pulled back, the world stretched ahead of him, vast, fractured, but no longer silent. He whispered to himself. The truth has a price. Above him, a new star pulsed. And far beyond it, something stirred in response.